So I'm ever more amazed by what fascinating times we live in geospatial. It's been a busy couple of weeks for me, but I wanted to give you kind of a reflection on some of the things I've been listening to and watching over the last week or two. I actually went to the Cloud-Native Geospatial Forum at Snowbird, which is just a few miles up the road from here. It was a really interesting 2.5 days. First time they've ever done it. It raised all sorts of interesting questions in my mind as I listened to things. Just stepping back for a second, I think where we live in the geospatial world is fascinating. It's been dominated by GIS for the longest time. We've begun to break out of that place, and a wider geospatial world is emerging, and new data and new technology, AI, are all part of the driver behind that. We still live in a GIS-centric world, and the new world that's emerging is trying to figure out its own place. It's got a bit of an identity crisis. GIS itself is primarily Esri. QGIS can't be ignored in the open source world. But that world is really the expert world. That's the world that's very much centered on the public sector. Why? Esri put their software into universities, and people who, like me, who studied their degrees in geography departments left and went into those departments. So that's where GIS is kind of stuck at the minute, and folks like Esri are trying to get it out of there, and it's been difficult for them. But again, GIS isn't going away. GIS is really important, but GIS isn't the only story now. It's not the only person in town. This emerging disconnected world is happening. And this conference I went to was interesting because there were really two things that came out of it for me. Well, more than two, but two primary words came out of it. Interoperability. I've heard that discussed for many years. And it's never been fully implemented. The OGC have always been really big in helping to implement or at least put those standards in place. Interoperability is that weird word, but it actually means, think about Lego blocks. Everyone builds a Lego block that you might be a different company, but your Lego block works and connects to this other Lego block that connects to this other Lego block. So it's the way you construct a new world by allowing everyone to play together nicely. That's kind of what interoperability is. And then agnostic is the other word that came out, which is no vendor lock-in. We still have a vendor lock-in world in geospatial, quite a strong one, but we're getting to break out of that. So interoperability and agnostic are two terms which are, I was going to use the word the wild west of geospatial. It isn't really that yet, but it's yet to formulate what it actually is, but it's growing beyond GIS, and still GIS is being used as a sort of a core term in that world, or in the geospatial world, but I think people are beginning to talk about, it was one of the talking points of this conference, that don't confuse geospatial with GIS. Certainly one fits in the other, GIS fits under the geospatial umbrella, but don't be confused that one is the same as the other, and it's not. Open was the other piece that came out of last week. Lots of talk about open data. It doesn't mean free data, it just means open data. So in a standardized format, etc., etc. So an overture there who are really important. Some really interesting sort of team player type organizations were there. OpenStreetMap were there as well. So it was a very interesting conference. But again, for me, it made me step back and start thinking about this emerging new world. One of the key topics that was spoken about was the fact that this whole DOGE thing, where federal funding is being cut, and a lot of programs that are geospatial programs are coming out of the federal world, or at least coming out of the public world. And that does also open up, I mean, it's a challenge to anyone that's reliant on the public sector who are in the geospatial world. You know, I think about the GIS spheres, for example. This is a challenge, but it is also an opportunity, because I think it makes people start to think more widely about geospatial and where geospatial should be used. Again, traditionally it's been, you know, if it's satellite imagery, or if it's remote sensing, often it goes to the military. The rest of it, lots of it goes into the public sector. That's federal, state and local government in the US, and to some degree infrastructure. But the much bigger world has really not been touched by geospatial, but maybe this is our awakening call to say, come on, we need to go wider than this. And on that theme, there was one talk at the conference which I found very interesting, which was really focused around, this wasn't the theme of it, but my takeaway from it was, which I've been talking about for a long time, we tend to be technology-led in geospatial. We always have been. We love talking data, we love talking software, we love talking platforms, but we need to be business-led. In other words, have the commercial guys lead the charge, not the technical guys. The technical guys need to be in the mix, but if we have this build it and they will come type mentality, which I think we have had to some degree in the past, we miss out on lots of opportunities. Opportunities have to be driven by a commercial driver. That means having frameworks in place, and in the business world, we don't generally have frameworks unless we go looking for them, but there's some really good frameworks. Design thinking is a framework I operate in, which allows you to actually work with, to come up with new ideas to solve problems. Again, an innovation approach to things. So to discover problems, to validate those problems with customers, potential customers, to build proof of concepts, to actually build out the idea, to get validation again from those customers, to iterate on that stuff, to go to an MVP stage where you build a watered down version of a product, which you've had validated again with a customer. Understanding, you know, the business value of the solution. Is it a 10-cent solution or is it $1 million solution? That's a big determinant of whether you should be moving forward. So there are really important frameworks that you can use in the geospatial world to evolve. And it isn't building a geospatial strategy, which I keep hearing about. That's more of a GIS thing. The geospatial world actually needs to be thinking about what is it's almost a business strategy, I suppose, really, but a framework to operate in to actually then expand the footprint and the use of geospatial, because there's a huge market out there for it. So anyway, more to come on this stuff. Some really important themes that came out of last week's forum up at Snowbird. So I'll probably write a few more things on this. But for today, thanks for watching.